A group of red deer start the day in the early morning mist, a sight you might expect to see in a nature reserve. But this is actually a military training site in Germany. Here at the Grafenwehr training area in Bavaria, there is an abundance of wildlife.
We have wildlife throughout the area. We have some of the largest red deer populations in Western Europe actually located within the training area, as well as a number of other protected flora and fauna species.
Most people would be surprised to learn that military training areas hold some of the most endangered species of plants and animals, precisely because they are used by the military. But military training sites, which are often protected in many NATO member states and some partner countries, are in fact used for more than training military personnel, serving as islands of biodiversity.
You have about an area here, about 34,000 acres, roughly about 17,000 hectares in size. One of the premier areas for military training actually in Europe is Grafenwehr training area. But it's also known, or I should say increasingly being known for as a high hotspot for biodiversity. So you have this fascinating win-win combination between a premier military training area and also an area of very high ecological value.
Probably a lot of people don't know this, or it's hard to understand. Actually, military training supports or biodiversity, and this is due to the nature of training, that you have training throughout the landscape that opens the land, creates bare soil, and that gives species that have a hard time to compete with other species a chance to survive and to get larger in numbers.
The US military Grafenwehr training area offers the largest and most dynamic live-fire training facility in Europe that also provides training facilities for NATO countries. Given the apparently destructive nature of military training, it may seem paradoxical that sites like these are full of large numbers of red-listed species. But many of the threatened and endangered species living on military lands thrive there because of the disturbance, not despite it.
Even explosions, they create craters. You have a water puddle in the crater, and certain animals, they live in those water craters, those bomb craters. Tank tracks are good. Even erosion created by military training can be positive. For example, for the kingfisher who lives in the embankments of eroded creeks or of erosion ditches, he digs his hole, his caves into the embankments. So it's actually any kind of military training.
Here you can see a typical pond created by vehicle driving on a training area, and this is the perfect habitat for the yellow-bellied toad. But also it is a good habitat for other animals like frogs or dragonflies, and these kind of habitats are getting very rare at other places in Germany. They need these kind of tracks to survive because in former times they lived in areas of the rivers, but the river banks, they are very regulated in our times, so there the toad doesn't have a habitat anymore, and so the last places where they live are actually the training areas.
Military training areas throughout Europe and North America are among the richest and most important sites for biodiversity, often because they are fenced and not open to the general public, but also because environmental awareness and wise tactical use of natural resources is encouraged among soldiers.
One of those products that every soldier training in Grafenwehr receives is what we call our soldier's field card. And the soldier's field card includes environmental do's and don'ts, emergency contact information, other types of maps. So this is a handy reference for all soldiers training here at Grafenwehr. And what we've seen with products like the soldier field card and also the playing cards as well, which include a lot of the environmental do's and don'ts messages, is that a small investment in environmental training means a large savings down the road in potential repair or other types of maintenance projects.
If there's anything like a leak, you have to stop it, you have to contain, you have to call range control and do anything you possibly can in addition to stop a leak. When we refuel in the field, we have to make sure that we do it on a concrete pad and that it's done by the support platoons out here that know what they're doing and have the proper equipment.
A well-maintained environment also adds to training realism. Good environmental stewardship in fact supports authentic training conditions.
You know, we have the ability to focus on conservation, but that focus gives us a sustainable training area. For example, we're not driving around in mud and dust. We actually have vegetation and the management of forestry that gives us a better natural conserved training area and a better place for our soldiers to train.
Although the general tendency is to prevent disturbance when trying to preserve unique plant and animal species, disturbances such as fires caused by bombing are crucial for ecosystems.
All right, fires, move down range, check your target.
Well, we have a kind of a decline of the yellow-bellied toad in training areas as well, because we don't have as much vehicle and tank training on the open areas as in former times. So we really need to think about what to do for the yellow-bellied toad. Maybe we can have an ecological tank or something like that, creating puddles like this. Or maybe also we can convince the military trainers to go more into the open areas again.
Military training areas are increasingly recognized as sites of high biodiversity and large numbers of threatened and endangered species. In the case of the Grafenwöhr training area, it is even considered to be one of the possible spots for the return of the wolf. I'm Karsten Reiniers, reporting for the NATO channel.